in my opinion, I probably shouldn't say this, but there's only one way Roosevelt could get the United States into war without being thrown out of office, because he come out and told everybody and the mothers, American boys are not going to go to war. He knew the Japanese was going to attack Pearl Harbor.
And so you were already a Marine at the time on 7 December.
Yeah.
What was that? Where
I joined the Marine Corps in November 17th, only 2 weeks ahead.
Oh, man. So you were in Marine boot camp on 7 December 41.
Yep.
What happened that day?
I come over the loudspeaker that the Japanese had bombed Pearl Harbor. We were dumbfounded, really. We didn't expect that, not with the ships and that around. But it's lucky that there was 2 aircraft carriers that was out to sea and the support ships along with them. Otherwise, our fleet would have been almost annihilated.
So then you graduated in early 42 and went where? Where did you go? You went up to the fleet at that point?
No, I went to the First Guard Company in San Diego. We had the brig to take care of, the flag raising on the parade ground every morning, and we also handled the prison work. We'd take out maybe 4 or 5 prisoners and clean up an area or clean up a building or something like that. And that's about it.
So you were there all the way through 1942?
No, because I was there in April. I was there for 4 months. I was getting a little tired of the guard company, and they were forming the 2nd Raiders. So I went and asked the colonel. I went up to see the colonel, and I can't think what his name is. I went up to see him, and I said, "Sir," I says, after I snapped to attention, and I said, "Sir," I says, "I'd like a transfer." He says, "You'd want to what?" Which I'm getting a little ahead of my story, because I was put in charge of the prisoners that cleaned the NCO lounge, and they liked the way I managed the whole situation, so they didn't want to see me go, which didn't do any good when I went up and asked for a transfer. But he jumped up out of his chair, he says, "I'll give you a transfer." No, next thing I knew, I was eating dirt and gravel. Tank school.
But where was tank school?
Tank school was part of Camp Elliott.
And so you go through tank school and then out to the fleet there later in 42.
Yeah, we were forming the 2nd Marine Division. There had been regiments like the 6th Regiment, 2nd Regiment, 8th Regiment, which is the part of the 2nd Marine Division. But we were forming the 2nd Division, and we were forming the 1st, 2nd, 3rd platoons, and we were working with the divisions that were going to be attached to, because a company of tanks, platoon of tanks of a particular company, like the 6th Marines, we were attached to the 6th Marines, and we were B Company of the 2nd Tank Battalion.
So you trained there for how long?
In October of 42, we pulled out, loaded ship, and we didn't know where we were sailing to. We were heading for New Zealand. In New Zealand, we spent close to 9 months.
And you were training in New Zealand?
We were training in New Zealand.
Where in New Zealand?
Just outside of Wellington. We were 16 miles from Wellington. That was on the North Island in New Zealand.
So then the task force heads out. So that was the 2nd Marine Regiment, the 6th Marine Regiment, the 8th Marine Regiment, and the 10th and the 18th that were on Tarawa.
Yeah.
Only the Marine Corps for that battle.
Yeah, well, the 18th Marines was the engineering regiment. The line regiments was the 2nd, 6th, and 8th. 10th was artillery.
And then you were part of the tank battalion there?
We were the tank battalion there, part of it, yes.
When you headed in that direction, at what point did they start to tell you what could be in terms of the defenses? Because as I understand it, and in my reading, they knew how long they had to build up.
I would say with their force, what they had ready, because they had that planned I would say they had more than that, because they were island hopping, and it didn't take them long after they hit Pearl to hit the other islands, because who could protect them and who could fight them?
Well, I read a quote yesterday that was pretty interesting from Admiral Shibazaki. He said it would take 1 million men 100 years to take his island.
Wasn't true, but it could have been true. But they didn't know how to use their force. They could have annihilated the rest of our fleet, but they didn't.
In terms of their coastal defenses and how they did it.
Their coastal defenses were pretty doggone good.
I read that they had 14 Type 95 light tanks. They had 8-inch Vickers guns. They had 500 pillbox on the island. 500? 500 pillbox, 500 defensive positions built in.
On Tarawa?
On Video of Tarawa. Yeah. That was the report.
Yeah, Video was the one that we had the code name Tarawa.
So 4,500 Japanese soldiers in defense. Now, did you know they had? Were you told that they had captured Koreans as well as laborers? You were aware of that on the ship?
Yes.
What did they tell you about that?
They told us we're going to take the Gilbert Islands. Period.
Was it broken down to this campaign this day, or was it?
We didn't know exactly what we were going to do once we got on the island, except we knew we were attached to these 6 Marines. 6 Marines needed tanks, and I was with the platoon that was assigned to the 6 Marines, which I can't think what battalion now.
Was their armor, was the Japanese armor a threat at all? Their 14 Type 95 light tanks that they had, was that a concern of yours?
No. We were concerned more about their tank gun, though. They had a 40mm anti-tank gun. The shell would penetrate the armor on our tank. Although we knew in advance a little of that, to where we put a 1/2-inch armor plate along the sponsons, which is the sides of the tank. The airspace in there was about a 1/2-inch. If they got a lucky shot where the shell would penetrate the armor plate, but it would lose its power through the turret. And if it did penetrate the turret fast enough, the inside of the turret we knew would shred like shard of glass.
And these are amphibious tanks, correct?
They're land tanks. We're landed right on the beach. Now, on Tarawa, the light tanks, which say 18 ton, the LCT, landing craft tank, would take us in and land us on the beach. Or they would land us not quite on the beach. We could navigate, I would say, water maybe 6 foot.
So this is the morning of 20 November 1943, correct?
2 o'clock in the morning, we started to disembark.
In the dark?
It wasn't in the dark long, because lights on the ship. Because we handled the winches and everything that where the tanks were in the hold, and we were in the first hold. We had 2 men on each winch. One winch would lift it up, then the other winch would swing it over off deck, and then the other winch would loosen the cable to drop it down in the boat.
And when did you set foot on the island, you personally?
Well, not at first. Our tank in the coxswain that was taking the tank in was too close to the edge where the slot was cut through the coral, and it sheared off a screw off of the tank, and we were dead in water except to go around. So we hobbled out to a destroyer, and the officer of the deck says, "What's wrong?" Coxswain yelled up to him. He says, "We lost the screw." So the officer of the deck turned to the white hat that was on the quarter deck, and he says, go get the underwater welders and get them up their ass up here, his language, and get that screw cut off and get another one welded on. So I say we got on the island. By the time we got the tank fixed up and everything to where we could navigate, they had the beach.
So earlier on the 20th of still 20 November.
20 November, I would say about 10 o'clock we got on the beach. They cut a slot. Now I don't know exactly where they cut a slot, but it was by one of the docks.
Okay.
And that's what we went through. The boat could take us in because inside that coral reef, you had 10, 12 foot of water. Now with our tanks, if they're sealed properly, which we made damn sure they were, we could travel in 10 foot of water.
With the snorkel kit?
With the snorkel kit. Yeah.
But if you got deeper than that, that was a problem.
Then you're sucking water and you're dead in the water. Drown or get shot.
How many tanks were lost on the way in?
Our battalion lost none. C Company medium, which we asked to have a company of medium tanks because they finally had a ship that could handle medium tanks because those things weighed about 38 tons. So we got a company of medium tanks. They lost all but 2 tanks. I don't know how many men they lost. I've got a buddy, lives in Lincoln Park. He was standing next to the lieutenant that was in charge of the tank leaders. And when the lieutenant got killed, they had a mess.
So it's still the 20th of November, and now you're landfall, 10 a.m. And you start moving, it appears to be north, towards the hills. It's a small area.
There was no hills. There was just as flat as could be. You could shoot right down.
Yeah, they don't show much of an elevation here. You're right.
No.
About 100 feet. But, you know, you look at this, and there's less than 2,000 yards, the whole island. The bulk of it, the landing strip, maybe 1,000 yards. And they had 4,600 soldiers and 1,200 forced labor Koreans. There's a hell of a lot of people to pack in that small area.
I think we killed 6,500, I think, something like that.
Wow.
It was rough.
And you had support?
We had support from the ship, you betcha. We wouldn't have made it without it. All the destroyers and the destroyer escorts, they just, when they got broadside of that island, all of their guns were blazing. Then they swung around and made another spot, and they kept that up. If it wasn't for them, we would have never made it.
The news reports were 6,400 dead.
I think it was, well, we buried them. I think it was 6,500 that we counted.
They said, the Marine Corps history said 1,009 KIA and 2,101 wounded in action. That's when the Alaskan Bay was sunk, where it was were the Marines aware that ship was sunk during that operation?
No.
They were not. So, talk us through the 21st through the 23rd, and you're part of that.
We didn't last long in the tank. The drive sprocket in our tank, the Japs knocked it off. They aimed at it and they hit it and they put us out of action. Next thing we knew, we were in a shell hole and we couldn't get out of it.
Still on the 20th?
First day. We got one shot off. Building over on the left flank, and there's a Jap come up the stairs. Where the hell he was doing anyway, we got one shot off. The next thing we knew, he was flying in the air, and that's all.
So then what happened?
Then we were infantry. Because you're infantryman first.
First is a Marine, a rifleman first.
We more or less protected the command post. No, we dug our foxhole and set out the guard for the night. That was it. I don't recall any action at night to speak of, but we didn't move at night. We dug our hole and took turns sleeping.
Then the next morning?
Next morning we pulled out, and as the line moved, we moved.
And what were their defenses like during that?
Well, we knew they had shore guns, because we hadn't been up that part of the island yet, and we were watching out to where we could get a good shot at them, so we could put them out. As we advanced, we took advantage of whatever there was to hide or protect ourselves from.
There probably wasn't much.
There wasn't much, no. But we had the firepower. And all those ships needed was a little flash of the gun they had the last days.
So their resistance stayed strong until?
Till the last day, I'd say. Because as you advanced, you had fresh power.
And the Marine Corps reported only 17 prisoners of war from 4,690 KIA.
11 prisoners of war.
11.
All women.
Really?
Took them out to the ship, and the captain of the ship refused them. Went out to sea, then dropped them off. Shark bait.
Wow. So, how many Marines stayed behind on the island?
God, it's hard to say, because we stayed behind until all Japanese were buried. Because there's nothing smells worse than a lot of dead bodies laying around. I don't think it took that long, I think. Because we had the bulldozer come down and made the trench. We laid them in side by side.
And you lost a friend on that island, you said?
No.
No?
C medium. They had quite a few killed. I don't know how many, because I didn't want to get Eddie agitated, or because it still hurts him, even after 75 years.
I can imagine.
Because he had a lot of friends. Because the first sergeant was killed there, the lieutenant was killed. I don't know how many friends, but he was a senior sergeant there, so they made him first sergeant. He never got the pay for it, but they made him first sergeant, and he took charge. And he was also supply sergeant. He was responsible for the ammunition and whatnot that the tank had to have and stuff like that. Their operation was set up a lot different than ours. Ours, the infantry, took care of us. They wanted us with them. They made sure we had the ammunition we needed and everything.
So then for you, that campaign was over and you're back on the ship close to Christmas in 43?
I don't know exactly when.
What was the next stop for you then?
We were taken off ship at the harbor in Wellington. They had to unload the ships and stuff like that with our gear and everything. So it took us, by the time we got everything unloaded and everything, a couple of days, then we were at the camp. Camp was already, rear echelon was already, had our camp, and our bivouac area was the big island of Hawaii on a Parker Ranch, which in the rear echelon, quite a few of the maintenance men, police sergeant, and whatever left to set up camp. So everything was all set up for us.
So there you were, there into 1944 now.
44. Then we were training. In 1944, we were training with the infantry. And like I say, we were attached to the 6th, so we trained with them. So make sure they knew how to use the telephones that we had in the Grouser box and whatnot.
So a Grouser box, as I understand it, was a way for them, a connection on the back of the tank that they could connect to?
It is part of the sides of the tank, right way in the back. And it was connected to us, yes. We could talk to them, they could talk to us.
But through a wire?
Yeah.
So then in 1944, in June, was the Battle of Saipan. Can you talk a little bit about that, about how that happened?
Battle of Saipan, yeah. That was a funny one, because that's the one they left us land. And then they started at the waterline, and with their ship-to-shore guns. Most of them were 8-inch. Then they let about 4 waves of the troops coming in, make it on the beach, and then they started at the waterline and started raking the beach and working inland, and until the ships got a line on where they were and put them out of action.
So this was the 2nd Marine Division, the 4th Marine Division, and also the Army, correctly? The
27th Army Division.
Was right. The first time that you had worked with the Army?
Yes. How
did that go?
You want me to tell you?
Of course. Probably some rivalry always between the Army and Marine.
Well, no, because we had worked with the 37th Army Division too, and no, my mistake. We did not work with the 37th, but 37th Army Division worked like us. You would have thought they were Marines on them, but anyway, we tried to help them. You don't like to say a lot of times, but anyway, every once in a while the Army a sniper would hold them down, and so we'd have to go back to see what the hell was holding them down, because they were in the center. If you don't keep that line tight, you got Japanese coming in behind you. So, and we tried to inform them, when you got a sniper up in a coconut tree, you figure just how tall he is, where his privates are, and you don't try to shoot him in the head. You hit him with his privates. He drops his rifle, and you got him.
That makes sense. So there were 8,000 Marines that landed that morning, right on the 15th of June.
I don't know how many.
That's what the book says.
But there's plenty. There's plenty, because you had 2 divisions.
The 2nd and the 4th, correct?
Yes, 2nd and the 4th, and our division strength usually was around 18,000. When we hit Tarawa, we hit there with 21,000 men. We had an aircraft. On Saipan, we also had a battalion of 155 rifles. If I'm not mistaken, they were Army. They weren't ours. And they were falling short, and they were hitting in our front lines. So we turned them around and let them shoot Tinian.
How would you explain the difference, just in terms of the lay of the land, the topography between Tarawa and Saipan?
No comparison.
How so?
Tarawa was flat. All the way through. You could shoot from one side to the other, front, back, or whatever. They had no place to hide except the holes that they dug.
Whereas Saipan was not.
Saipan was mountainous. Some say we had the worst part because we had 2 cities to go through, Shankanoa and Garapan. And of course, when you have cities to go through, you got house to house, and that's always dangerous.
Can you talk a little bit about the personal weapons that you had? What you carried, what worked, what didn't, what did you like? What was your personal weapon during this time?
I had a rifle. Well, actually, it was a carbine, 30 caliber carbine. Now, mine was different than the tanks. The tanks were working with the infantry. I was not in a tank on Saipan or Tinian. I was with the executive officer. We would work with the tanks. If we had a radio with us, with a Jeep radio with us, Jeep operator. We had a radio operator, and me, I was a runner, and the executive officer. We handled any time a we had to dispatch a group of men or tanks or whatever it may be. They would get, the platoon leader would send a message back to us. The radio operator would get a hold of the exec. The exec, if he thought it was important, he'd get a hold of the skipper, say, and tell him we need X number of men, or whichever battalion, company of the battalion it is, and if we can spare them, we would send them over.
So your group moved through the two coastal cities there, and then where? What direction from there?
After all these years, I'm pretty sure it was north.
But it seems like they had the advantage in a mountainous defense of shooting down at you.
Yes, they did. They took advantage of it too.
And how do you defeat that? Well, who was spotting? How did you do that?
We just watched for any type of flash, and we'd get the battle wagons if we had them, which we did. Or the cruisers. We had some pretty big. Oh, that sea was just loaded with ships. You couldn't see any end to it.
You had ships come up on station that would get fire control, and you could call it in on those targets.
Right, and we had aircraft that we could call on.
So now we're into mid-June 1944.
Yeah, we hit that. We were a little late hitting the islands because we lost the alligators at Pearl. And then they had to wait for another ship.
People might not know what an alligator is.
It's a water tank. Like a land tank is heavily armed and got heavy armor. But the armor on an alligator is thin. We had I'd say probably 15 maybe. Wasn't too many that they had.
What was the turning point on Saipan? The point you understood that you had momentum in the battle. You were moving forward.
We were better armed. And we had the ships out in the bay. We would call on them, and the quads are such that they know exactly. When we look at the map, tell them exactly what we wanted, and they take it out.
So then, moving forward after that had happened, what was the wrap up of Saipan like? What do you remember about that?
Well, what I remember the best about it is that we had a mile yet to secure, so we turned it over to the Army, and we went back to clean up our tanks and everything, and to get ready for landing on Tinian, which is about 10 miles away. So we had all the gear out of our tanks and everything. We running it, and we got the word, had to go back up on the line. Japs had broke through the Army line, and they got them in a more or less a pinch. They're in behind them, side, front. So we loaded up again and headed for the line. I can't think of the colonel's name, but he was in charge of the 6th Marines. He went up and told the Army general, we're shooting the first man that walks back. That night, the Army held the line. They were more afraid of us than they were of the Japs.
I believe it.
So we had a little fella, his name was Grow. He put on a little white cap and a little Japanese jacket, and he looked just like a little nip. So we had it fixed so he knew, the 6th Marines knew he was coming through the line, the Army knew he was coming through the line, and he was heading for Saipan. He had a nice little bicycle, a little basket on it, and he filled that basket with rare old elk whiskey.
And they allowed him through.
How those tanks ever moved the next morning, I'll never know, because every one of those guys they were looped. They moved them. But he come through the line. He looked like a little nip. That's what I remember most. And that was good whiskey. I mean to tell you, it was good whiskey, good bourbon.
How about that? So from there on to Tinian.
Yeah. We hit Tinian, I think it was the 26th of July that we hit Tinian. Tinian was a little different.
How so?
Because you had a cliff. I'd say the cliff was about a 15-foot high. And after reconnoitering and seeing what could be done, because there's only one sandy beach, south end of the island, but only a small one. All the rest was cliff around the island. Japs didn't think Japs thought we were coming over there, so they had all their armor and that sitting there waiting for us. We come up the cliff. We made ladders out of 2x4s and made them about 18 feet long, 20 feet long.
Didn't make a lot of ladders.
No, we had enough of them, but we made ladders, and we had one little area where we could get artillery and that up. See right here? And they'd have it up the front end of the boat. The coxswain would hold that boat right against the cliff, and one right after the other. Up we go. So the Japs really didn't know where we were going to go. We sent a group of men along South End where the beach was, so they'd think we were going to make the landing there. But we went up the back. We didn't even have time to get the copper from the aircraft, because we took the airfield almost intact to make our whiskey. Well,
in Marine fashion, you had your own stills made.
Oh, absolutely. We had a couple of boys that knew really what to do, and the cooks and that were to get the sugar.
How long did that campaign take?
If I recollect right, we secured the island the 26th, and we landed on the island, I think it was 15th of June. Date could be one way or another.
So about 11 days?
No, it was a little better than a month. We hit there in June, and I think the 26th of July seemed like it.
As I understand it, there was a bigger civilian population there.
Yeah.
How did that go?
We didn't see too many of them. The Japs kept them out of the way. The only time we seen a mess of them was at the cliff when they're jumping off the cliff.
That's a pretty famous scene that Navy cameraman had of the civilians jumping off the cliff because they were afraid of what the Marines would do. And
they were told that we were worse than the devil.
And that went on for a day or two.
Yes, it was.
It was pretty strong propaganda by the Emperor and everybody on down.
Yeah, because we tried to separate the natives from the Japanese. It was a mess. It was about 15 feet down to the bottom. And it was rocky and whatnot. And they jump and they'd kill them. Japs, they thought, and according to a lot of the movies that put out about that, they thought we were trying to save the Japanese from jumping off the cliff. We had to stop shooting because the cannon barrel was getting too hot and it could set the shell off before you
cook off in the chamber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was terrible, but that's life. Because actually the natives weren't bad. I was on the island till 24th of December, so almost 6 months.
And that time the construction was starting.
Pardon?
They were doing runway construction?
On Tinian. Mm-hmm. We weren't on Tinian. After we secured Tinian, then we came back to Saipan. The 4th Division stayed on Tinian. What the Army did, I don't know, because we didn't see the Army after that.
So at that time, you're almost into 1945.
Not quite, because 26th of the month is when we landed on Tinian. It did take us, it seems only like it only took us about 7 days to take that on it.
But then you were back in Saipan.
And then we built our camp. 4th Division was on Tinian for security, and we were on Saipan for the same thing.
And you stayed there until you said around Christmas time. So what happened then on Christmas Eve?
I come home. Yeah. I was scheduled to come home on the ship in the harbor. We were leaving on Christmas Day. Bob Mylan, he was a fellow from Detroit. He was supposed to come home with me. I can say this because his parents are dead. He didn't dig a foxhole. Washing Machine Charlie come over just to irritate us, and dropped a couple bombs, and then he'd take off. A Stratton would come through the underbelly of the tank and kill Bob. But he wouldn't have if Bob had, but he crawled under the tank. He thought he'd be safe.
And had he dug a foxhole, he probably would have been alive.
Yeah, he would have been all right. Yeah, because we made our camp. There's a little stream that was going through the island, and we got the equipment that we needed, and we built a shower. Took a 55-gallon drum, put holes in the right place. That was the head, continuous flow. And then we built a air raid shelter, plenty of steel. We made use of it, and we welded the top and then put dirt over it after we used the steel that the Japs had there to make the roof of the air raid shelter. We didn't have to use it much, but the only one come over most of the time was Washing Machine Charlie.
So one aircraft.
Just to irritate us.
So you spent that Christmas Day on the ship.
Well, the storm come in as we were pulling out of Saipan, and the ship would go up, the bow would go up, come down a crash, and the starboard turned to the port, and it was terrible. Everybody on the ship got sick, but we headed home. Got over in Hawaii to stop because we had to take on some more men that was going home. A bunch of Marines coming from Guam were coming on deck and watching as they were going by me, and sure enough, here come my brother. He was coming from Guam. He was a air wing. He was a gopher guy that every time pilot needed something, they'd go for it.
And you didn't know you were going to see him?
No, he didn't know I was coming home. So we spent the 30 days leave. Then after that, they sent me to Washington, D.C. for 6 months, R&R, rest and relaxation. Couldn't rest there, though.
Why?
They had 11 acres of women. We counted them by the acre. We didn't count them by individuals. We counted them by the acre. They had 11 acres of women there. We had our barracks at 23rd and Constitution. We only had a 4-hour post, so you had the afternoon all night. All you had to do was show up for your post the next morning. No roll call or nothing, but it was good. And now Constitution Avenue was a little grade. You come out with your Liberty card, and you look up and down Constitution Avenue, you see a nice car. You just go up there, open the door, climb in, and away you'd go. Didn't give a damn what you looked like or anything, as long as you're a man.
And away you went.
Away we went. Yeah, I got a picture in charcoal picture there.
Look at that handsome devil.
That was my birthday. Yeah, that's pretty old.
Fantastic. You did a great job. So then we're on into 1945. And
yeah, that was 45. I spent 6 months in Washington to the day.
But now Europe fell that May, right? So you had VE Day that May.
Yeah.
Help me understand what that was like. So you're in D.C., May of 45. Europe falls. Germany falls that May.
But prior to that, Roosevelt died.
While you were in D.C., he died.
Well,
oh, boy.
Right. Each outfit in Washington, Marine, Army, and whatnot, had an honor guard all the way to Arlington Cemetery. He's not buried in Arlington, but he was taken to Arlington, and from there, he was taken to the train, which would take him home. Yeah. It was a shame that he wasn't able to see the downfall of Europe.
So you saw his funeral procession come through?
Yeah. We were 2 days. be there for what, 4 hours, 8 hours, not to wear us out. Mostly you were at ease. Very seldom were you at a parade rest.
Okay. So after Europe falls there in May, Roosevelt dies, Europe falls. What was the mood? What did you think was going to happen?
Well, we thought the Army would come over and help us with the Pacific.
And invade Japan at that point.
Well, that was in the air because the 2nd Marine Division was scheduled for the first wave. That was us. I was at Camp Lejeune at the time because I was in Washington, D.C. for 6 months, and then I was transferred to Camp Lejeune to a mortar battalion, and we were training for that, and we were scheduled for the first wave.
So you would have deployed from the Carolinas there to the other side of the country and picked up a ship?
If that happened, we would take off from Camp Lejeune. That's where the ship was, because I can't think the date, but it was about a week prior to the first bomb that we started loading ship, because we were scheduled for the first wave. We got the order to disembark. The war was over. So I says to the skipper, well, I says, I should just about be ready for my transfer. He says, I wouldn't count on it. Next thing I know, they sent out a call for all tank men on the East Coast. So they got us, and we sent to the Army base of, I think it's Camp Davis, and the colonel knew that most of us wanted out. So he gave a little speech. He says, boys, he says, these are Dutchmen. A lot of you are looking for discharge. Well, I'll tell you, just as soon as these men are trained and on that ship in the harbor, he pointed right out there, then and only then can you go home. They couldn't speak English. We couldn't speak Dutch. Well, we trained them. When they got on that ship, I walked up and I says to the old skipper, I says, I want a discharge. Because I was already close to a month over my enlistment.
What was your rank at that time?
Corporal. Yeah, I didn't make sergeant until I joined the Navy. Well, that's a third-class petty officer. Yeah.
So you get your discharge.
I got my discharge, and I went back to work.
This late into 1945?
No, that was, oh God, when did I go back to work? Well, at that time they had that 52-20 club. 52, you know what that is?
I do not.
That you get $20 a week for 52 weeks. So I thought, hey, that's going to be pretty good. So I'll take a little bit of that. So I signed up for it. That lasted 2 weeks.
What was tell me more about that. I'd never heard of it.
The United States government give every serviceman a year's vacation if he wanted it. 52 weeks. $20 a week. Well, that was that'd be about the wages of the labor outside.
And you took it for 2 weeks?
I did it for 2 weeks. Well, everybody was working. It's bored. The hell with it. I went back to work. Today's air rifle. Then I was put on the afternoon shift.
This is in Plymouth, correct?
Yep.
Daisy was in Plymouth?
Plymouth, Michigan.
What did you do for them?
They put me on making the BB shot. I had 5 headers to run.
But then, somebody told me you went to the Army after that.
Yep, I joined the Army.
How in the world did that happen?
Well, because a friend of mine says, with your experience and everything, hell, they'll give you a good rate. Start out as sergeant and work your way up quick. Huh. I went in there as a corporal, and I stayed a corporal for 3 months. I says, that's too late. At that time, you could resign. So I says, I want my discharge. So I went out. Then, most people don't know, but there's a clause in case of war, they can grab you and put you right back in the service. But I says to myself, I better get in a hammock. That's where you join the Navy, you know, you swing in a hammock, you know. So, went up to behind Montgomery Wards. They had a Quonset hut up there. That was where they met. And I was in the engine room. They taught me everything about oiling the turbines and everything, which was pretty good. Until they call you back. And
so what year was that?
That was 49.
So you covered all 3 branches of service in 8 years. Because the Air Force hadn't been formed yet.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty amazing.
Well, had to do something.
And that you did.
Yeah. That was, yeah. Because they called me back, the Navy did. That was in November of 1950.
But you were married at this point, were you not?
Yeah, I was married. Yeah,
okay.
Got married and everything. Nice little girl.
And tell me about that, about being deployed.
Well, they called me back, and we were going back through Great Lakes and reclassified, if you wanted. So I get up in front of the yeoman, and I say, Mac, I says, make that rate gunner's mate. He says to me, he says, what makes you think you're qualified? I'm qualified. I said, you got my record. I'd look it over. He did. He says, you're qualified. So I'm walking out to almost ready to go out the door. And he says, hey, mate, he says, why did you want gunner's mate? I said, boy, we're going to war. When they start dropping those damn bombs, I said, I want to be topside, not down the hole where you just hear the noise. I want to see what's going on. Okay. So they send me over on Guam. Oh, that was a nice island. But you can't do much with $15. And because I said, all of a sudden my wife just had a miscarriage, and because I think it was the shock that I had to go. And then she had to go back to work. We just bought the house in 49. That was rough. So, and then I went aboard, and I did just about every job there was on the magazine.
What ship were you on at the time?
Oh, none. I was just over on Guam.
Okay.
Naval magazine. You couldn't have a war unless they had us, because we had all the ammunition, bombs and everything. You name it, we had it. Yeah, I was there for 18 months. Yeah.
And no leave during? Did you get a leave during that time to come back?
No. You kidding?
Your wife didn't see you for 18 months.
That's right. And you can't do much on $15. That's what I had. Of course, there wasn't much that you could do there anyway.
There's a couple of things I missed. I forgot a few things. I thought I read everything down, all the questions I wanted to ask you, but I missed a couple.
Oh, that's easy.
And one of them was about an Arisaka rifle that I saw that is in pristine condition that you sent back.
Yeah. Well, when they knocked our tank out, they hit the drive sprocket on the left-hand side. All we could do was go around in circles, and we ended up in a shell hole. No way could we get that tank out of that shell hole. So when you're dead in the water, you get the hell out of there before they get something big, like an 8-inch gun lined up, and you know. And so we jumped out of the tank was at an angle, and we jumped out and we're in the shell hole along with the tank. Well, we had the sniper. He was trying to get the right angle to where it would ricochet off and get us. Well, he did. He lost a jacket on a 31 caliber because they hit the tank. The lead stayed there, and the copper jacket flew off and cut my arm and cut the vessel, which was my tank commander. And we finally, the two of our tanks come up, and we walked in between the tanks to get the hell out of there. Now, the rifle, the guy didn't need it anymore, so I picked it up, and he had a full belt of ammunition. That was because I couldn't get out and get my pistol, because every time I go to get up, shing, and kicking up dirt around me. One of these times I figured he's going to get that thing lined up right. But I picked up the rifle after one of the guys popped him off, you know, and then I went and got the rifle.
That was your weapon then. How'd you get it home?
Well, I got it home because everything had to be censored. And the censor was Lieutenant Bennett. He was the censor. He had to censor everything. If he said it's okay, you nail it shut, the postage on it, send it home.
So you sent it home?
The only thing that was missing was I can't think what the name of those nuts were. Beetle nuts.
Beetle
That's
nuts,
what
yeah.
it is, yeah. And I had a handful of beetle nuts in there. We didn't use them, but we thought it was funny that they used them, and it turned their teeth all black and just rotted the teeth right out of their mouth. But that's how I got the rifle and got it home.
Were other guys sending home captured weapons as well? If they could?
If they could. But Bennett, he was very, he wasn't too good at first. He was a lousy lieutenant. Him and we had Lieutenant Bennett and, there was one other lieutenant, Chase. And he was my lieutenant. But we had Bennett trained. He was the censor. And when we get everything ready, have it all set, you had to take it up to the post office. Because he was a bastard when he first come on. He thought he had the world by the tail. And through Tarawa, he learned a lesson. He took a slug in the fleshy part of the legs. And everything was fine until he found out that it was American 45. And every tank man had a 45. So he changed his way. We had no trouble with him after that.
How about that?
And we had an idea who did it, because we had one guy that was a crack shot with a 45. He never missed.
So for the most part, your officer corps was pretty good.
Yeah.
It sounds like.
Yeah.
Did the Marine Corps want you to stay on in reserve capacity after that?
Yeah.
They certainly had enough people, but they wanted to keep them.
Yeah.
What did they do? The push was on pretty hard, I imagine.
Yeah.
To get you to stay.
I told you, because I could have made sergeant if I re-enlisted. I says, that don't work with me. I says, I'm going out. I was put in, one of the duties I had was watching when they'd come in to rework the ammunition. They'd heat the powder up, the shells and that. They had to keep that temperature at a certain degree. Other tests and that. And they wanted me because they liked the way I handled the ammunition. I says, no, because the Navy wanted me bad. I says, no, I'm going. So I went out. When I went home, I was released back to inactive reserve. And then in, was it 53, I think it was, I was discharged. But what people don't know, that doesn't mean a damn thing. They can call you up anytime you want. Once you serve, that's right. They can call you.
And you agree to it.
Yeah. But it wasn't too bad. I worked with the men that was reworking the ammunition, which it was interesting to know how they did it, because if the powder wasn't any good, they'd dump it in the ocean to get rid of it. Because if the powder is no good, you pull the trigger and all you get is a Yeah.
Maybe get a round stuck in the barrel.
Yeah. Oh.
You know, so a lot of people, teenagers now, don't really have an appreciation for what happened in World War II, especially in the Japanese and the island campaigns.
They are getting it now. I have more people that see me sitting in the restaurant with that logo on my hat. But it's a bar, they pay for my drinks, or can't do anything. They come up and say, thanks for your service.
Yeah, I think people are finally aware of that. It's disturbing to see how many younger people are not aware.
But it's surprising to see how many there are, though.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah, because you don't know what they're going to do in Washington, you know. They can put you in a big war. Why should we police the whole world?
Well, I mean, and about the time that you were joining the Marine Corps, to go full circle here, there were a lot of people, including Henry Ford in this town, that didn't think we should police the whole world. He didn't want to go to war. No. He didn't think it was good for us.
That's why Patton says, we got our troops here.
Keep going.
Let's go to Russia. That's why he died. Anybody and his brother can't figure that out.
You don't think it was a car accident that did him in?
Oh, hell no. It wasn't.
You think that we could have prevailed where the Germans failed, to be that far extended to the east?
If Frederick von Paulus got the clothes that he asked for, they'd walked over the Russians.
Probably. So of your friends at that time, you know, in your circle of friends as a young guy, you have certainly had people that went on into the Army, people went into the Navy.
Oh yeah, a lot of them did. There was nothing outside. You could go back to the job you had. That was promised you, and they couldn't renege on that. And you could have went just like I did. I worked six months at the job I had before I went in the service. I started that job $15 an hour, and I was up to about I had worked there 2 years, I think. You know, I was up to almost 25 cents an hour before I went in the service. You know, after I got back, I went back to the Daisy. I worked there about 6 months, and then the three of us, my younger brother and my friend and I, we went down to the county. We went down there to apply, and McElroy's clerk, McElroy was the one that had to give the okay. Clerk says, there's no positions here. Well, we said, that's funny. I says, Robertson told us to come down here and get a job. Well, just a minute. She walks back in the office, come back up. We just happen to have 3 jobs. Yeah. So, I worked 48, 49 is when no, it was 50. I got called back 50. Well, I told you how I went aboard ship. I went right straight to Guam. I was ammunition handler. We were stacking the ammunition as it came off the ship into a sorting area. Then after the ship went, we loaded the ship for Korea. We'd go back and what we loaded in the sorting area, we'd store in the magazines. And it was taking them 10 days to get the ship in and out. So a few of us boys went up and talked to the ammunition officer. He was a chief full warrant. Told him we should be able to cut that down. Can't really get the time to do it. So he went up he says, I'll see. We told him what we wanted to do. So, come back, and he says, I talked to the exec. He says, go ahead when you have time. So we started, and we got a manifest, what came in, what went out. And we realigned all of the magazines according to the way we had to load them. You had a manifest, you needed so many of one kind, so many of another, and whatnot. And most of the time, it's about the same. So we lined up the magazines accordingly. Because we cut it down to 3 days. From then, I went to driving a truck, 10-ton diesel, Then after that, I went on inventory of the ship, and I went home. But I had made sergeant, third-class petty officer by then. And they wanted to give me another rate, but I says, not me.
Time to go home.
I went home. Because at first I asked him, I says, where's the married berries? Oh, we don't have them. That's why I'm going home. I says, I got a wife and child. No. Yeah.
So then, you know, you think about that, 18 months deployed without a rotation home stateside. That's an awful long time.
Yeah.
To spend away from.
Well, the rate for a rotation would be 22 months usually. That's what we had. Because I had 27 months over the first time before they'd rotate me. I don't know what it is now.
I don't know what current Marine rotation is. What is it?
12 to 14.
Mm-hmm.
But a leave somewhere in there, not 18 months.
No.
Back in Afghanistan, not even that.
Yeah, and certainly not 22 months. I don't think the Navy even sends people away for more than 6 months now. Well, I'm hoping we can look over some of these too. What do you have? I want to see some.
Well, you remember the Doolittle Raiders?
That's him, Jimmy himself.
Yeah. Well, I got
Franklin and Eleanor Roosevelt, Jimmy Doolittle.
Well, that's was our company on Saipan. The one of the photographers of that was shooting it for the Marine Corps. We let the Army relieve us, and we went back to clean up the garbage from their tanks and that, and the Japanese broke through the Army lines, so we had to go back up. Our colonel told the Army that was in charge of his troops, we're shooting the first man that walks back.
Now, where are you in this rank here?
I'm in the second row. Now, the first row has got two people. These guys in front that are squatting.
Okay.
They didn't have room for them, so they squatted there. But that's only the first row. And so I'm in the second row, right about in this area right here. These are the Japanese prisoners that they surrendered at the Naval Magazine in 1951. They didn't know the war was over.
Where had they been?
In the magazine area.
Hiding out.
Which was a mountainous area. Must have had 100 or so, some acres. And there was 11 of them. You heard of the Battle of Wellington? Mm-hmm. Oh, it was a bloody thing. They moved all the New Zealanders that were sent to war in the Mediterranean area. They moved them back at night, didn't tell nobody about it. And here all their wives were shacked up with Marines. Oh, the bloody Battle of Wellington. Oh, it was.
I know.
Not me. I wasn't involved in it.
No.
I had to steady him on my own. Okay, that's, I got bigger pictures of that.
There's the Doolittle Raiders.
Yeah. That's the B-25s. This is one of the second platoon. Second platoon was the one that made the deal with the... Did I tell you how we got the camera?
No.
Oh, okay. When the planes started landing on the airstrip on the Gilbert Islands, one of the guys from the second platoon went up and asked the pilot, "Have you got a camera?" "Yeah." "And film?" "Yeah." "Well," he says, "could I borrow the camera and one roll of film?" Yeah. And what is it for me? Any souvenir you want, you just say it and we'll get it for you.
And what did he want?
Well, a lot of them wanted ears and stuff like that, but he just wanted some, maybe a pistol or something like that.
That's how you got the camera.
That's how we got the camera. So they needed 4. I think they needed 4. That left, what was there, 8 shots? That's all. We had a picture, each one of the platoons. Now, I don't think I have a picture. Maybe I do. This is one of them. There's 3 of them. That's the signing of the Japanese surrender.
There's MacArthur.
Yeah, he's giving them the speech. This is one of the 8-inch guns. And there's Timmerman.
You told me he was killed.
He was killed.
How did he die? Circumstances.
He's tank commander and he rides with the turret open. A Japanese threw a hand grenade when it come in, and he didn't have time to throw it out or anything. He just held it to himself, and it blew his guts out. That way it saved all his men. He didn't have any of his men got hurt from that. And so he got the Congressional Medal of Honor.
Arthur, I can't thank you enough for your time. I really appreciate it. I hope we can do it again.
Well,
I've been wanting to do this for a long time, to get these stories recorded and get,
there's a lot more to it.
I want to hear more.
Just like he talks about the admiral with his head.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, to this day, I can't tell you who cut the head off. Whether it was me, I don't know. The only thing I know is I had the head on the end of the shovel. And how I got in that pillbox where the admiral was, I don't know. There are a few things that, well, like Josius. I was down there directing the tanks, bringing them onto land up from the ship. And I was spotting where I thought they would be safe until we would take them back in the interior. I looked over where Juke was parking his tank, and I says to him, I yelled to him, I says, Juke, he says, get that goddamn tank out of there. There's a shell coming in, it's going to take that tree out. He parked under a tree. He says, oh, Russell, he says, you're crazy. I says, move it. I had the authority then. He just got it out of the range, and up comes the tree. It would have taken him and his tank and everything.
So you could see the future. You told me one time that you'd have premonitions your whole life.
Yeah.
About things that were going to happen. Lucky for him, you had that one.
Well, I had many like that, but
it seems like the guy you'd want around in combat. I'm going to help you up. Let's get you fed.
Oh,
you all set?
Oh, yeah.
You bounce out of that.